This is the Weekly Squeeze. I'm your talented and lovely host, Chanale Music, coming at you from the land of Israel with episode 205. Hey everyone, I have such a great show for you. All week long I was thinking I cannot wait to drop this episode. I had a soul-stirring, perception-altering heart-to-heart with a woman that I actually met and didn't have a chance to connect with on such a level until I invited her to be on the podcast. And I'm so glad I did, because her writing comes to life when she speaks. She's a mother of 2 soldiers. She lives here in Israel for many years. She's an American, and she's watching, as I am, as things burn, literally. Did you see what's going on after Bibi's speech? We're going to get into all of that good stuff, but I'm just glad to finally have a chance to sit down and record this episode and tell you, first of all, about my banging week. I have been so busy. I was in the Knesset this week. That's right. I was in the Menachem Begin Museum this week. And while it's a small museum, it's an important one. And I had a few minutes to remind myself the incredible people who built this country, who sacrificed for this country, who did remarkable things for this country, because we've never been able to live free and comfortably. We've always been under duress and stress and have had to fight just to be left alone, just to live here and do what Israelis do. What do we want to do already? Some of us want to go to the beach. Some of us want to go to the hotel. Some of us want to go zip lining and skiing. And some of us just want to sit on the street and play guitar and be besimcha, because we're in Eretz Yisrael. And they don't let us do that. They don't let us do that. They never have. The Arabs have been murdering us and slaughtering us and terrorizing us since the foundation of the country of Israel and before. So, 1929 massacre in Hebron, look it up. So the point is that when I was at the museum, I was reminded what a force he was and the incredible people who ensured that I'd be able to live here with my fellow Jews. And regardless of their political associations or religious beliefs, I commend them for giving their lives, many of them actually giving their lives or limbs for Israel, dealing with all this garbage. I mean, when I see what's going on now, the inflammatory rhetoric and the way it's just embraced and encouraged and always directed against the Jews, just how widespread that sickness is. I believe 100% that they back then they were up against the same garbage. And these were Holocaust survivors. You know, they came completely tzibrochen. So, yeah, social media, technology, that hasn't changed anti-Semitism at all. It's just made it worse. In any case, Menachem Begin lived a tortured, difficult life, completely dedicated to Israel. He was a close friend, confidant with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, meeting him on several occasions, having long off-the-record conversations. And while I'm not going to get into his entire portfolio, I will just say that Bibi last night, well, he portrayed that same presence that Menachem Begin had when he spoke. He commanded the room. He was articulate. He was forceful. He was direct, poignant when necessary, just straight to the point, and unapologetic. That's the word I'm looking for, unapologetic. And that's what we need. Israel needs to stop apologizing. All right, there's so much I want to talk about. There's just so much going on. And there's so much that has gone on that I want to fill you in on. So let's get to it all. The fact of the matter is we're still at war, and the IDF is still operating in Khan Yunis in Gaza. And last night we got the news that 5 bodies of 5 hostages were recovered. Maya Goren, Oren Golden, Staff Sergeant Tomer Achimas, Sergeant Kirill Brodsky, and Sergeant Major Ravid Aryeh Katz. So their bodies were recovered in a military operation in Gaza. I saw a video of the soldiers, a chilling video of the soldiers saying Kadesh at the spot they found their bodies. And another video of a soldier in a van, it appears, an army tank of some sort. And the bodies are wrapped in silver plastic, and the soldier gestures to all of them and then holds up 5 fingers and then does like a yesh. We're bringing them home. Like, we got them. They're in our hands. Heartbreaking. Truly heartbreaking. It's just, you know, we used to real for days after a terrorist attack. And now there's no time. But today will be a day of mourning, and we will cry with our families, and we will listen to their loved ones' heartbreak, and we will honor their memory, and we'll visit their Shiva tents and print stickers and put those all over the country so we can remember all the young dead people the Hamas killed since October 7th. And then we'll mourn, and we'll wonder how Simchas Torah is going to look. And if you think that's not a conversation, it is. Like, how are we celebrating Simchas Torah this year? Like, how is that going to play out? Are we just going to pretend it didn't happen? Are we going to cancel it? Are we going to mourn? No, it's a day of Simcha. We're celebrating the Torah. But to come to Hashem with that level of faith that since October 7th, you, despite everything you've seen or we've seen and experienced, you still completely trust him, and you want to celebrate the Torah, and you want to thank him for giving it to you and letting you live as a Jew, even though living as a Jew means being slaughtered on Simchas Torah, the day that you're celebrating being a Jew. So how that plays out, it's very deep. It's very, very deep. And I think Am Yisrael, or at least the Israelis that I know, are anticipating the Yamim Noraim, the high holidays, with a certain level of concern and maybe dread. But at the same time, we know we'll be able to celebrate with a full heart because that's what we do. You know, the Jews sang Ani Mamin going into the gas chambers. The Jews always found joy and peace in completely connecting with Hashem. So I think it'll be a day of reckoning for many of us, a day of sorrow mixed with a deep understanding that there are things we just don't understand. And this is one of them. How so many months after October 7th, we could still be in October 7th. For over 10 months, families are waiting for their loved ones. 10 months, day in and day out, 24 hours a day, thinking maybe they're alive, praying for them, and then knowing that they're never going to see them again. They're never going to be able to comfort them or tell them that they were thinking about them this entire time, or show them how the whole world rallied for them and how there's posters of them everywhere and that we prayed for them when we did challah bakes and we even wrote a Torah for you. They're never, ever going to be able to do any of that. They just are going to be able to mourn. And that in itself is a blessing, considering that there's families that don't even have that. So thank you to the IDF for bringing our bodies back and for risking their lives to do it. You know, they're risking their lives to do it. That's the bottom line. Tell me what other country would send their young, robust, brilliant, and talented young men into a war zone to pick up dead bodies. I could assure you, the Russians and Ukrainians are not picking up dead bodies. It's just, we're different. We are different. These are our people. They belong to us, and they belong home. And that's what I'm talking about today with Forrest Rain. I know. That's her name. Don't wear it out. But do wear it out and wear out her link as well. I'm going to put it in the show notes. Forrest is an incredible writer, and we're going to talk about what it means to live here, what the connection is, why anyone would want to continue to fight for a country when there's so much horror, bloodshed, abuse, fear, PTSD, mental illness, physical illness, trauma, anxiety, and just pain. Why would anyone want to be here? Well, because it's home. And home is where you belong. And that's what it really comes down to. So yeah, hard day this morning following a fiery speech by President, I'm pulling a Biden, by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was wearing his hostage pin, his America Israel pin, a well-tailored suit, his wedding ring. The guy hasn't aged a day. He looks great. He looks great. I don't know what they're feeding him here, but he has good genes and he just looks the part and he sounds the part. And there is no better representative for Israel than Bibi that I know of. Okay, let's leave it at that. So after the drone attack in Tel Aviv last week, Bibi postponed his trip to America and we weren't sure when he was going. And then he went. I actually saw a clip of the airplane, and they took Israelis with them, and we weren't sure exactly who was going. Noah Argamani was going. We knew that much. We saw her when they landed. But last night at the speech, we saw how Israel had prepared to get the message across about everything. Everything he said was true. Let's start with that. Every single thing he said in that speech was 100% authentic, verified truth. This stuff has been a conversation on Twitter for the last 9 months. The whole speech was basically a Twitter thread. Just at some point, I was like, it was all slogans. It was all slogans, but that's hasbara. We're constantly saying things like queers for Palestine is like chicken for KFC, and I have to say that was the cringiest moment in the whole speech, and I was like, whoever let him say that should be fired. But that's one of those things that the prime minister just doesn't work, or he should have said it a little differently. In any case, he did give a speech that was, albeit a little slow in the beginning. I wanted him to lay it on thick. I wanted him to come out there guns blazing, and it took him a little bit to warm up, but then he really got into it. And I'll share a little bit what the internet thought about the speech. First, I was just like, wow, the energy in this room is amazing. Like, this is better than a Taylor Swift concert. Like, legit. The people there they stood up 53 times to applaud for him. 53 times. Like, I was like, this is the longest standing ovation I've ever seen. Like, this was great. Rashida Tlaib looked like she wanted to kill herself. Like, literally, I was pretty sure she was going to blow herself up. She's so miserable. She literally has a face only a Palestinian mother could love. Sitting there with her little paddle like she's in an auction. War criminal Bibi. Like anyone cares. It was so ironic that she was holding that panel. There was a tweet earlier from Rashida right before Bibi started talking. I showed it to my daughter. We literally burst out laughing. I have to pull this up for a second just to show you how demented these people are, how off course these people have veered from reality. Oh, so here's the tweet. My daughter she exploded in laughter. She tweets this out right before Bibi's speech, and she's standing with some Muslim guy, also a face only a Palestinian grandmother could love, with her hijab, with her Palestinian flag. This guy looks about 40 pounds overweight. Joining me in the chamber today is Hani Al-Madoun, who witnessed 150 members of his extended family in Netanyahu's genocide. He looks pretty spiffy for somebody who's been in a genocide. After witnessing his sister forced to eat animal feed, he and his family were determined to start a soup kitchen to feed their starving neighbors. Okay, first of all, he's not starving. Second of all, I am so happy that his sister had to eat animal feed. Third of all, his sister didn't eat animal feed. They don't even have animal feed because they don't feed their animals. Their animals are starving. They don't have dog food there. What are they talking about? These people are professional liars. She should be irrelevant. She is a war criminal, as everyone keeps saying all over Twitter. Some people saying the best part of Bibi's speech was when he named just 4 of the many IDF heroes. I concur. I was like, is that an IDF soldier on every single news network around the world right now? I was like, oh my God, this is so long overdue. Wow, a IDF soldier wearing his uniform and his medals proudly. One of them without a leg, one of them without a hand. 2 of them are Muslim. Lieutenant Amichai Ruvain, Master Sergeant Ashaf al-Bakhiri, Lieutenant Asa Sofer, and Lieutenant Jonathan Ben Hamal. There was an Ethiopian soldier, Amichai Ruvain. He didn't have a car, so he put on his uniform and he ran 8 miles to Gaza, and it was a very hot day. The guy ran to Gaza to help with his life, a hero. There was a Bedouin soldier. Everyone stood up and applauded for him, and that was a powerful moment. Elon Musk was there. I mean, I didn't even notice him because I was just like so. It took a while to like actually believe this was all happening, and they're like, "Is that Elon Musk? Is that Douglas Murray behind? Is that Noor Argamani and her father in front of Elon Musk and Douglas Murray?" The whole thing was just it was really surreal. And I think we were all rooting for Bibi and hoping he said all the things. I'm actually in a WhatsApp group with John Spencer. And when he started quoting John Spencer, I was like, John Spencer, they're talking about you. It was a good moment. By the way, after the tour, and this is just perfect. Bibi's just, the guy's Bibi Melch Yisrael. The guy, he's king. The guy is king. He gave a tour of the Tesla factory Elon Musk gave Bibi Netanyahu a tour of the Tesla factory. You can go on Twitter and see it. And Bibi and his wife wearing a shockingly orange suit. They get to see that new Tesla tank thing. And it's just the richest, most powerful man in the world. Supports Bibi, supports Israel, supports the Republican Party, called the Democrats a bunch of anti-Semites. The tide is turning. The winds are changing. Do you guys remember when Trump got shot? Who? Donald Trump. Wow, I read somewhere that Trump got shot, but Biden got killed. Biden was taken out. Yeah. So the speech was well received, and I'm happy about that. I am happy about that. Israel needs to be able to tell the world what's going on. And, the useful idiots line, that was a good one. And I was so excited when he dug into the college protesters. He's like, you guys are useful idiots for Iran. You are chickens for KFC. That's how I would have said it. But that was the nature of what he said. And that's the reality. He said, we are fighting for you. We are defending you. Because the Hamas terrorists are coming after you. As a matter of fact, they're outside. They have flags outside. It says on the Liberty Bell now that we are coming for you. Hamas is coming for you. Free Palestine. Those same people support terrorists who dig tunnels under children's bedrooms. There's a kid's bedroom here. And let me tell you, these people have nicer rooms than my kids. And you see a full, the pink aron and butterflies on the wall, pink and purple, and there's a rug on the floor, and you lift up the rug, and lo and behold, there's a terror tunnel. And that's where the father takes his Kalashnikovs and his bullets, and he goes down to fight for Hamas. Just, somebody's dad saying, honey, I need to move the bed to get under here so I can go fight for Hamas and kill Jews and free Palestine. Yeah, we're going to go to Jerusalem and we're going to take everything that belongs to the Jews. And no one asks you anyway. You're just a woman and your opinions don't matter. And that plays out in houses all around Gaza. So, yeah, I thought it was a success. He mentioned the Bibas children, and outside literally played out exactly what the Democrats are encouraging all this time. They have created a monster that is bigger than them. And that's why there were no cops out there arresting people that were desecrating the Capitol. They spray painted the Liberty Bell. They burnt an American flag. And then when a patriot came and grabbed it, because it's illegal to burn an American flag, you go to jail for that. It's illegal. You're not allowed to desecrate a nation's flag. If you do that, you need to leave. And an American patriot came and grabbed the flag and ran out of the crowd. And they were literally like, grab him. They wanted to lynch him. This is on the Capitol. And the reason this is happening is because Kamala Harris decided not to attend Bibi's speech. And she gives room for this behavior. She encourages it by saying, well, there's room for conversation. And therefore, we're going to have to spray paint that Hamas is coming with red triangles all over the Capitol. Vandalizing. They made an effigy of Bibi covered in blood, holding an axe like a butcher with blood coming out of his mouth. It's the most anti-Semitic. Does it get any more anti-Semitic? It's textbook anti-Semitism. These white American useful idiots are burning an American flag, holding Palestinian flags, tearing down the American ones, desecrating the monuments that American soldiers died for. They're rolling in their graves. The people who sacrificed so America should be a free country. And here we are. The terrorists have arrived. And they're making it very clear. And the Democrats are encouraging it. And until Kamala Harris comes out and disavows from anyone who holds a Palestinian flag and not an American flag, in the other hand, Rahman al-Islam. But if she doesn't come out and say those words, to me, she's a nobody. She's worthless. She's absolutely worthless to me. And the fact that she didn't show up last night tells us everything we need to know about this empty vessel. And that's what she is. And I want to read you a little something. I know this is going to stir up some controversy. And we love controversy on this podcast. Hang on. You guys know who Ayn Rand is? The fountainhead. I'm sure you know the Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged. So Ayn Rand was a Russian philosopher, and she wrote some best-selling books, including an essay on why women should never be a president. And she didn't mean a president of a company. She didn't mean a CEO. She didn't mean a manager. She didn't think that women shouldn't be in leadership roles. She meant specifically the presidency. And she wrote this in an essay called About a Woman President. And you're not going to find it online because it's not online. But this is what she writes. For a rational woman, such a position of authority would be an unbearable situation. If she's not rational, she shouldn't be president. Being a leader of all the men she has to deal with would be psychological torture and would require a total depersonalization. She would have to suppress every personal aspect of her character and would not be able to function as a woman. She would have to function only as a mind, not as a person. By the nature of her duty, she would become the most unfeminine, sexless, metaphysically inappropriate, and rationally revolting figure. For a woman to seek or desire the presidency is a terrible prospect, a spiritual immolation, indicating that the woman who seeks it is psychologically unworthy of the job. I'm not saying I agree 100%, but I'm not saying I don't. All right, I want to tell you about my week because I had a lot of opportunities this week and I want to bring them to you. And part of the reasons that I take these opportunities is so I can bring them to you. So let's start with the most depressing one, and that is the release of a new book by a 23-year-old Israeli author called Testimonies Without Boundaries. And last week I went to the Menachem Begin Museum, and they have a theater, and they had a book signing and then a conversation with Avi Meir from the Jerusalem Post. He's the editor-at-large, editor-in-chief, with the author of this book. And unfortunately, it's not a joyful book. It's a horrific book, but it's a necessary one. Alon is from Haifa. He's a college student, an author, a journalist, and a TV anchor. And what he did after October 7th was immediately, I'm talking about within 24 hours, started calling people and asking them permission to record what was going on. And despite the fact that there was a lot of chaos following October 7th, he was able to get through to the people and record their stories with permission. And he documents it in this book. He spoke to Zaka members. One of them was actually right there in the audience with us. He spoke to the head of the Institute of Forensic Medicine. He spoke to the survivors of Nova. And he shared some of the stories in the book. And he also explained how the book is categorized. So say you have PTSD and you don't want to read one particular type of incident, then you can go to a chapter that doesn't include, let's say, sexual violence or anything that has to do with kids. And so that's commendable. And at this book signing, I discovered that the book is currently being translated into as many languages as possible, including into Chinese. They had a Chinese woman there was a Chinese woman in the audience, a journalist, and she said that she supports Israel and she wants to get in touch with him and see that it gets translated into Chinese as soon as possible. But it's going to be in Spanish and in French and in Italian. It says on it, warning, this book contains graphic and difficult to read descriptions of the horrific atrocities that were committed, and its content is not suitable for children under the age of 14. And he said it really depends on the kid and what they can handle, but it's about the monstrosities. And he said these people are not, he said, I can't even describe them as animals because animals don't do these things. And he went into great detail to describe some of the things that he was told. And if you're wondering how he is, he's in therapy. Let's put it that way. He is in therapy, and he took one for the team. He said, I took one for the team because this book had to be written and these stories had to be told. And people should know. People have to know. No one can ever say this didn't happen and that the internet says something different. So you can order this book, Testimonies Without Boundaries, on Amazon. I'm going to put a link. You can order a hard copy or get it on Kindle, but it's unfortunately, tragically, heartbreakingly, one of the books that we need to have. And the cover is a teddy bear that's been shot and there's just blood everywhere. And, I was actually walking back up to the train and I bumped into my cousin who's here for her son's bar mitzvah. And she's like, where were you? Why are you in Yerushalayim? I'm like, I went to a conference. And she's like, was it fun? I was like, no, it was horrific. It was for October 7th. And we discussed all the atrocities and how we need to tell the world about it. And just like, that's just the reality of living here in Israel. That's what I do in my free time. So yeah, go ahead and support Alone and get the book. Not even support Alone. Like, they're practically giving it away, but just buy the book and have it and get it to people who don't believe what happened. Send it to them in the mail. If you have a friend who's like, October 7th, send them the book. I promise they'll read it. And once you read it, you'll never forget it. All right. What else did I do last week? Oh, I know. I went to a bar mitzvah. in Psagot Winery. And if you've never been to a bar mitzvah in Psagot Winery, you should have made Aliyah, but you didn't. So you didn't get to go, and I did, and it was fabulous. It was out in the Shtachim, past Yerushalayim, Tzomet Tapuach, if you want specifics. Brand new, I want to say building. I mean, it is a building, but it's a winery. And like when you come in, you can see the barrels. They put like plexiglass in the floor so you can see down a floor below, and you could see all the barrels of wine. I've been to a number of wineries here in Israel, but a Simchat winery, next level. First of all, it was elegant. The view. I mean, how often are we in those neck of the woods where our ancestors literally walked on those lands? And yes, there's Arabs everywhere, and that's why it's not really safe to drive there. But when you get there, it is so worth it. The bar mitzvah was amazing. And I didn't drink too much, except that I did. No, I didn't. I actually had a Zoom following that about, maybe I drank too much. Just, what we're dealing with as far as the Arabs and their mentality goes. So, yeah, that was the bar mitzvah. And I bless you all that you should be able to celebrate your simchas here in Eretz Yisrael with your kids and your loved ones, and a lot of delicious wine and great music. And the music was Chassidish. I was so excited. I go to a lot of Israeli weddings, and while I love Israeli music, it's like my guilty pleasure. It really is. Don't tell anyone. There is something to be said about a simcha, that the music is more refined, and, the choices are made so that the party maintains a nice Hamish or Chassidish environment. And I appreciate that. I really do. And it doesn't take away from the simcha. In fact, it only enhances it. So I enjoyed the music. The food was divine, not normal, divine. I can't even tell you. I make parties. I go to parties. I attend parties. I love food. But this was next level. And I was like, you see, Americans come to town and everybody, gets in line. Try to deal with Israelis when you live here. It's impossible. You ask for one thing and you get whatever they're in the mood of. But here it was, not only that, they had the cutest, I went over to the bar mitzvah boy's father and I said, I hope you got magnets. And he's like, no, we got something cooler. I'm like, of course you did. But they were taking pictures and then turning them into these little figurines not figurines, but they laminated the pictures. They did like a cutout and then stuck them into these little wood blocks. And then they stand like these placeholders or just something you put in your room, a little tchotchke. And it was just, another example of Israeli creativity. And if you don't know what the magnet sensation is, well, then you've never been to Israel, because every single person has a magnetic door full of magnets. Every single simcha, there's a photographer, and he's the magnet guy. And you make sure you get your pictures, because in about 20 minutes, he's going to put them up on the board, and it's going to be a great shot, and you're going to put it on the door, and everyone who comes over is going to be looking at your magnets and be like, oh my God, I have such a fun life. It's all about the magnets. It really is. Or the figurines, whatever you could afford. All right. So that was that. What else did I do last week? I went to the Knesset. Did I tell you I went to the Knesset? I went to the Knesset because David Friedman spoke. David Friedman, the guy who's very suntanned, white hair, Donald Trump's ambassador to Israel. Because of them, there's an embassy in Yerushalayim. So he spoke, and I was like, I'm going to the Knesset, you bet. And it was great. First of all, the second I come to the Knesset, I get yelled at because I take out my phone. I'm like, already storing. They're like, you can't take film here. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was like, put your phone away. And then my jacket was beeping and I had to go get frisked. I'm like, I love Israel. I'm the last person looking to make trouble here. Anyways, we go into the Knesset and it was perfect. They had all the things that I needed to see during my first visit to the most secure building in the world. Let's put it that way, where Bibi works, where Israeli laws are passed and chairs are thrown at one another, all in the name of democracy. So it was good to see. There was actually a session going on when we were there. They were taking a vote, and they're very strict. Like, they don't let you take pictures too much, and they didn't let us crick around. My husband, he speaks Hebrew, and, handshake here, fist bump there. And I kind of snuck around where I wasn't supposed to go, and I filmed whatever I could. So if you want to see it all, go to my Instagram page, My Beautiful Land of Israel. and it's in the highlights. You will see it in the highlights. It says the Knesset, and you can see the things that I saw and the winners of the Israel Prize and the statues and the Chagall art, which is just insane, and Israel's Declaration of Independence, which is right there. So yeah, that was great. And then I heard David Friedman speak, and that's really why I came. And he spoke for about 5 to 7 minutes about Israel's sovereignty in Yehuda and Shomron and how we need a one state, and the Palestinians should be like the Puerto Ricans. They should be quasi-citizens and not be able to vote. And that's it. They've made their bed. This is what they get, nothing more. And he has a book coming out, which you mentioned a few times. But that was interesting. I saw at the cafeteria. I bumped into a Knesset member, an Ethiopian, the first female Ethiopian woman ever to be in the Knesset. She's there since 2003. I took a selfie with her. And I'm glad I went. Even though it was a fast day and boiling hot, it was so worthwhile. I came home with a massive headache. But I went to the Knesset. Doesn't that make me cool? I think it does. Okay, before I get to my conversation with Forrest, there are 2 ways for you to help Israel. And this is not a commercial, and it's not a pitch, and I'm not putting music. I'm just keeping it really simple. I, Chanale, want to help the soldiers. That's my thing. And there's a million ways you can help Israel, and I'm not going to take that away from you. But if you want to help the soldiers specifically, if that's your passion, if you have neighbors, friends, sons, relatives, if you just find yourself drawn to the incredible heroism of our boys, then by all means, this is the place to show your love. I'm putting 2 links below. One is for barbecues and one is for gear. The gear is purchased by my friend. He goes to Tactical Zone, buys the helmets, buys the batteries, buys whatever it is the soldiers request, brings it to the soldiers individually. And those of you who have bought helmets know that I will send you a video of the soldier receiving his helmet and thanking you personally, because it's as simple as that. Your money comes in through the website, Israel Gives. Israel Gives issues a check to the vendor, let's say Tactical Zone, and pays for the helmet. And that's it. We don't see the money. We don't touch the money. We're just here to make it happen for you. So if that's something you want to do, you want to buy a soldier a helmet. Yes, we need helmets. We need gear. We need new boots. We need tanks. Not tanks. We do need tanks, but you can't buy a tank. Backpacks, any of that kind of stuff. Just go through the link below. My friend Uri organizes everything. You can see all the pictures of him with all the helmets and all the stuff he's delivered. Every time money comes in, and as soon as there is enough, he takes care of it. He gets the soldiers the stuff they need, and I'm more than happy to direct you there so you can help our soldiers. The second link is for barbecues. What are barbecues? Well, barbecues are for our starving soldiers. If you think our soldiers are eating, they're not. The food in the army is crap. Excuse my French. And I know this because I saw it on TikTok. It's carbs, it's high salt, it's highly processed, it's cheap. It's not nourishing, wholesome, meat and potatoes like these guys really need. And that's where we come in. We find out from the units when they're available. For example, we're working on a specific party for 40 to 50 girls and gals who are going to be going into Gaza again in September. And we're hosting them a party. And we're bringing them out. We're going to do a fresh challah, and we're going to feed them and have a DJ and just give them a good time because they deserve it. And they should be fed and wined and dined and, given an opportunity to jump in the pool and live like an 18-year-old for a few minutes. So if you want to make a barbecue, if you want to do it, nishma someone, if you're coming to Israel, if you just want to spoil our soldiers and have me send you a bunch of videos of them having the time of their lives, donate to that link. Like I said, the Amitab will let us know and send us a check, and everyone's happy, especially the soldiers. All right, it is time to have a conversation with Forrest Rain. She really needs no introduction. I actually told her right before the episode, I'm like, can you just read the About Me on your blog? And we'll take it from there. I think that's the best way to introduce yourself to my audience and for them to get to know who you are and your values right away. And that's what she did. She's really a writer. She was hesitant even to come on the podcast. She's like, I'm not a speaker, I'm a writer. I said, if you wrote those words, you can express them verbally. So without further ado, marketing and branding expert, the voice of inspiration from Zion, contributor to the Elder of Zion website, the Counter-Terrorist magazine, the Jewish Press, Jews Down Under, and the Valley Patriot, as well as Israel Forever, Forrest Rain Racine. Forrest, welcome to the Weekly Squeeze. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I met you in Professor Ron Schleifer's house at the Intel meeting, but we didn't get a chance to talk. And the more I read of your writing, the more I want to know the person behind the words. So I figured let's bring you on the podcast. Let's introduce you to my audience. And we can start with your most recent or one of your more recent essays called Cracking the Israel Culture Code. I love talking about culture. This podcast was supposed to be about Jewish culture, Jewish music, Jewish entertainment news. And here I am talking about war, 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 war. So
Yeah.
let's take a brief break from all that. And if I may, first of all, ask you to introduce yourself. You're an American. You've been living here in Israel as long as you've ever lived in America. So you're really both, or neither. No, you're definitely an Israeli 100%.
No, I can tell you when I discovered that I am an Israeli when I went to America for a work conference, and I found myself behaving like an Israeli with Americans, and I made myself at home and took one thing from one place and one thing from the other, and I got in some woman's way, and she was so polite and so sweet, and she said, "Oh, excuse me," when I got away. And so I just started laughing and said, okay, now I'm Israeli.
I know because my husband he's an American in Israel and an Israeli in America. So that's what I'm saying. It's like you're a chameleon, you can shift. But being an Israeli is like it's like nothing else. And I think we're discovering this more now than ever watching what's going on in America. So just to introduce you to my audience, can you read the about yourself essay that you wrote? I think it really describes where you're coming from, who you are, what your values are, and then we can talk about your essay.
Great. So this is the introduction that I have on my blog, where I always refresh with new articles according to what's going on this time in Israel. But this stays because this is really who I am. So this is my introduction. My name is Forrest Rain, and I'm an American-born Israeli. I was born in the land of the free, the home of the brave. I was raised to believe in truth, justice, and the American way. Yes, I believe in the exceptional experiment that is America, not because of the ideas taught me as a child, but because of the reality I see as an adult in Israel. It is the land of my heritage where I see the living, breathing, battling to survive values of the land of my birth. Here, the theory is reality. And this is not strange because Israel is where it all began. Ours is the greatest story that ever existed. The elements that make up the fantasy and legends of other nations are our reality. People flock to see Hollywood films to be inspired, to be sucked into epic stories of love, overcoming unbeatable odds, battles for the future of a nation or the world. In Israel, stories of heroism, extraordinary feats, horror, honor,
Honor.
compassion, love, choices, and an epic battle between right and wrong, good and evil, being soulful and soulless are the stories of our lives. This is where your stories of the war come in, and they're appropriate, but they're only part of our story. I know of nothing more dramatic, inspiring, and real than the story of Israel. I believe the stories of Israel are relevant and can inspire anyone, anywhere. You don't have to be Jewish or religious or care at all about Israel in and of herself in order to benefit from Israel's stories. Israel is living proof that anything is possible. Unbeatable odds can be beaten. That is a valuable message for all people to have solidly in front of them. The stories of Israel tend to be left untold or twisted and warped so that a different reality is created. This is a terrible disservice to Israel, but also to the people of the world who can benefit from Israel's lessons. When surrounded by horror, there is always hope. Good does triumph. Spirit can conquer the greatest odds. Miracles are real. All lives matter. This is a love story. I will tell what I can, what I see, what I learn, in hopes that you too will be inspired. An age is called dark, not because the light fails to shine, but because people refuse to see. And
That's
that,
so powerful, so beautiful. I love
thank you.
that. I love that last line, the quote. An age is called dark, not because the light fails to shine, but because people refuse to see. And that's exactly what we're dealing with now.
That's it. That is Israel. That is Israel.
That is Israel, and that's the reality of living here. And I always say I feel bad that Israelis have to be Jews because we're so awesome, and everyone just hates us for who we are, and it's a pity because we have a beautiful culture, and that's why I made Aliyah. And I always tell people I don't need Costco, I don't need shopping, I don't need that materialistic stuff because the culture here is different, and that's what I want to talk about with you because it's hard to put your finger on it.
Perhaps they hate us not for who we are, but who they aren't.
Yeah, well, they project, I always say they project their low self esteem, their self hatred on us. And it's a pity because we have better things to do. And when you live here in Israel, you see a meaningful culture that's different than other places in the world. And I think the proof is in the pudding. We see with our soldiers, our youth, how we're handling this crisis, that the culture here, it's remarkable. And let's dig into it. So if I may, you have a recent essay called Cracking the Israel Culture Code. You write, Israel is one of the most misunderstood, misrepresented, and maligned countries on earth. The question is, why? Jew hate? Or because our Hasbara is terrible? In pro-Israel circles, either or both of these things are go-to explanations. However, neither is enough to explain the dissonance between Israeli reality and concepts different people have about Israel, from rabid haters to faithful fans and the ambivalent in between. Very few people have a good grasp of what Israel is or what Israel means. So let's crack the culture codes. But honestly, I don't even know what culture codes really are. So share with us who Rapai was and what he taught us about different
He
countries
was
and
a
their codes.
cultural anthropologist and a marketing expert. So what he did was research cultures in order to know how to persuade for marketing purposes for the biggest companies in the world and introduce products in the different countries. And there are challenges that can happen. For example, how do you introduce coffee as a basic staple in Japan when the culture is surrounded by tea? If you approach that with disrespect to tea, then you're going to hit a brick wall. So after his research, he decided that the best way to approach it was introduce coffee as a flavor that young children would begin to like, with sweets and candies in different ways like that, to bring up a new audience of people who also like coffee and not replace tea. But it is interesting, really interesting research, because I'm a marketer, and I think persuasion is it's all part of a scale, from marketing to sell a product to propaganda to force an idea on an audience. It's all part of the same thing, and understanding people and what persuades is something that really interests me. So his work was about digging down deep in audiences to understand what moves them. And what he found out is that every culture has an unspoken code that unifies their understanding of what things mean. And it's not things that you talk about, but things that are understood. And that is like a basic motivator.
Right.
So
You describe it in the essay as a cultural DNA, what makes each country tick.
So it's also in basic things like understanding of the concept of food. In America, food means fuel for your body. So when you think about food as fuel for your body, it makes sense to invent fast food because you just want food on the way. So the quality means less than the speed that you get it. In France, food means life. So that is something that you want to savor and you want to take time with and you want to really invest in, and it means something else. So the culture surrounding that concept is different. And then he went one level beyond the product to a country. The country itself has a code, or like a DNA. And he talked about America. So in America, the culture code is dream. And that makes sense because America is the land of golden opportunities, or at least that was how it used to be marketed. That you can show up, come off the boat with $20 in your pocket. And if you work hard enough, you can become a multimillionaire. You can be whatever you want to be because you can dream. So reading this book and thinking about his ideas led me to think about Israel. What is our culture code? And then I came to the conclusion that there's a dissonance that's very, very deep between what other people imagine Israel's code is and how Israelis define Israel. And when you understand that gap, you really see that the problem isn't Hasbara, which is a really terrible word. That's an aside, but Hasbara means to explain. It comes from the concept of explaining. And once you're explaining yourself, then you're already in the wrong. You're already the underdog. So it's a bad concept in the first place, but that's an aside. Israel has people who hate her and people who love her. So you have people who say Israel is the holy land, and they imagine that people are walking around being all holy and shiny and wearing white clothes and praying all day long. And there are people who think that Israel is the greatest place for gay parties in the world, and that it's all Tel Aviv and all gay pride and bars and bar hopping and going to the beach. And both of those things are true in a way, but neither one of them is true, because that's not the whole country. That's part of the country. And that comes from people who love us. On the other hand, there are people who say Israel is the startup nation, and they think about high tech and innovation. But if you're only innovation, then you can innovate anywhere in the world. So what does Israel mean? That's not, I can innovate in Silicon Valley, in Japan, and China, and in South Korea. They have great innovations. What makes Israel special? So that's a different title. There's the title of oppressor or bully, or a place where there's no heart. And that's something different, that people think that that is who we are. And that's also not true.
I know that people are listening and thinking, well, what is it then? What is it then? I know you're leading up to it. So have patience, everyone. It's good.
Israelis, and it doesn't make any difference if they're secular or religious, or Israelis who've been living in America for 15 years, have one idea about what Israel is. One idea, and it's all the same, and it's home. Israel means home. And that is very, very profound, because a house is a place where you can live, and you can live in a house for 2,000 years, but you long to go to your home that's yours. And it can be smaller and run down and not have a great, fabulous swimming pool, but it's yours. So this is a big, big difference. And when you start thinking of Israel as home, then all kinds of things start to make sense, because home is where family is. And for Israelis, family goes beyond the circle of your immediate family. It's everybody. Everybody in the country is your family. They're people that you're related to because they belong to your tribe. And you haven't met them before, but they're still yours. And that's why accomplishments are not personal. You celebrate, everybody takes credit for the Eurovision win or the Olympic wins. And also, grief is not personal. It belongs to everybody. Home is where your family is. Your family is a place where you can fight. You can fight horrible fights with your brother or sister or cousin or uncle. You can have a wacko uncle that really behaves in horrible ways. But when you're attacked from the outside, then you come together, because oy vey to somebody who attacks my family. So we can have terrible, terrible fights, but united against the outside world. Family is a place where your manners are not necessary. So when you know that people outside your inner circle are also your family, it makes sense when your taxi driver asks you questions that in any place else in the world would be considered really, really rude. Like,
or when the cashier throws something at you.
How much money do you make? Right. Or why aren't you married yet? Or, why aren't you having children? Or all kinds of like super personal questions that you would never dare ask somebody anywhere else. It makes perfect sense for somebody you've never met before to ask, because they're your family. And, manners are for strangers. They're not for family. So this is a big, big, big difference. And when you understand that, all kinds of things start to make sense about Israel. Now, family is the people that you defend. So our resilience comes from that simple truth. Home is a place that you don't give up on. Where else am I going to go? I don't have anywhere else to go. Of course, I'm going to defend my home. And you can't be an oppressor in your own home. I'm not occupying my own home. It's not. But only when you see things that way, then you begin to understand, and all the things that people abroad think are weird about Israel begin to make sense.
I used to think that America was the most patriotic country in the world. The way we encourage the love for the country, the national pride. July 4th is always a big spectacle. The Army is a respected institution. I grew up feeling a cultural identity as an American. You didn't live there as long as I did, but I felt very proud of what I thought was the unity and solidarity that Americans had, that you can go anywhere in the world and you have an American passport and you speak English. But when you really think about it critically, Israel has this on its next level. It is next level, as you explained so beautifully before. And it's, I think, very unique to Israel, the concept of home. Not that you don't feel at home when you go back to wherever you live. I'm sure Swedish people feel at home when they go to Sweden, and I'm sure French people feel at home when they go back to France.
But French people can live just as easily in England or in Germany or in Sweden or anywhere else. How is it possible to be born in Iraq or America or Brazil and or Russia and all belong to the same place?
And never go back. Some people never go back. They
Israel.
just completely assimilate into the country that their parents moved to, and they never look back. They're Swedish or they're American, Italians, but Italy is not, it's not calling. They don't pray towards it. They don't yearn for it. They don't run to it when there's a war, certainly. I actually met a Russian girl at one of the parties I hosted for IDF soldiers, and she said that her boyfriend, who was the entertainer at the party, they were in Russia when October 7th happened, and her boyfriend's like, I need to get the hell out of here and go to Israel. And she was like, when there was war in Russia, I left Russia. I went with you to Israel as well. Like, no matter what, Israel's home.
Because when it's home, you go back. When your family is in trouble, you go back to your family. That is the difference. That's one way to tell Israelis who are integrated Israelis or people that moved here because it was convenient, more convenient than living in a different country. And they don't really identify with the country. As those that run back, they're the ones who know that it's home.
Right. That was the El Al commercial.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was the whole idea of the airlines, coming back home. But how do you reconcile all of these external perceptions of Israel with what we're experiencing here? Like, we are, like you said, Hasbara is like not a great word, but at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time trying to present the image of Israel one way, and I don't know if we're succeeding. Because people don't seem to get our attachment to the physical and the emotional connection we have.
We're not explaining that. We're saying we're very good. We're good people. We're humane. We make great innovations. Those are not justifications for existence. Those are just qualities that you happen to have. Saying I'm here because this is where I belong and this is my home, and of course I'm going to defend it and I don't care what you say because this is mine and I'm not moving from here, is a completely different message. And nobody is hearing that. It's completely different. Being a social justice warrior for other people is not a justification for not killing you. Because you didn't give anything about who you are. What's your identity? My identity belongs to this land, to these people, to this history. And even if you're not religious, still the ideas and concepts in all of our heads come from the Torah, come from our background, from our heritage. We are still connected, also secular people, through the holidays, through the traditions, through basic understandings of the way the culture works, of what connects us.
Do you feel that understanding Israel's cultural code will improve our international public standing, our relations? Like, do you think it's important? So describe in greater detail what your vision would be if we had a clear, cohesive message for the world about who we are and why we're here to stay.
First of all, think about it on an individual level. Somebody who doesn't respect themselves you don't respect and you certainly don't like. You might feel sorry for them because they're weak and they're miserable, but you don't respect them and you don't like them and you don't want them close to you. And we've seen it in the past, when Israel was strong and the people knew that they belong here and this land is their land and the land gives them identity, and their ability to fight and stand up for themselves is what will protect them, and they're not looking for other people to look after them. Then people were very, very proud of Israel and admired Israel. And you just take a look at movies and you see the movie Exodus and compare that with Steven Spielberg's Munich movie, and you see completely different reality. Completely different. Steven Spielberg makes great movies, and Munich was supposedly about Israeli strength and fighting back after our Olympic athletes were slaughtered in a horrible terror attack in the Munich Olympics. But you see their wishy-washy kind of, I feel bad about what I'm doing. I'm not certain. I don't know. I'm, not strong in identity. And Exodus, they're talking about identity and being strong. And there's just no question about it. When you have no question about who you are, where you belong, and why you're here, then you behave differently in the world and people listen to you different. So that's the basic. I don't think that the problem is outside Israel. There's been hate. Anti-Semitism is the oldest hate that has ever been documented. And it's not going to change. But what can change is the way we behave and what we do. And that's actually something that we can control. I can't control what other people think, but I can control how I behave and how I talk about myself and what I do with my life, where I live. I had an extraordinary conversation with a man whose son is hostage in Gaza. His name is Tzvika Mol. His son, Eitan, was a guard at the Nova party. And he told me a bit about the story, what happened to his son when they saw last time signs of life. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to write an article that is for Jewish audience outside Israel, particularly in the UK. What message would you like to give to this audience? And he was quiet for a moment. And then he said, I want them to make Aliyah. I want them to move to Israel. Their life is going to become unbearable, and I'm afraid for them, and I want them to come home. And I told him, do you understand that what you said is extraordinary? I said, I know him, so I wasn't surprised at what he said.
I've heard it before, even on my show, from October 7th survivors. That's the message.
I wasn't surprised that he said that. But the idea that somebody who's going through something so terrible says, this is home, so together we can deal with anything. And abroad, I'm afraid for you. I'm afraid for other people that are abroad. I don't want Jews to be in a place where there's nobody who can defend them. That's extraordinary. And that's something very powerful to, I think, people everywhere, Jews everywhere should listen to. They should take really, really seriously. Israel is not an easy place to live, but it's worth every moment and every difficulty that there is.
Can you describe where you experience that feeling of home here in Israel on just a day-to-day basis? Because I don't know if people understand it. I don't know if people have ever felt it. Until you come here, you don't know the feeling. So can you give some personal experiences that you think exemplify Israel's culture code of home? I think we've seen a lot of examples since October 7th, that's for sure.
It just is in everything. I mean, you when you go home to your physical house that you call your home, you don't really think about it. It's just something that's natural. It's where you feel comfortable. It's where you could take off your shoes and relax. And in Israel, just wherever you go, you can be yourself. You don't have to worry. And there are people who are motivated by, what will the neighbors think about me and all kinds of things. But people say what they think. They do what they say. They mean what they say in ways that you don't see in other places. And you can have the cashier, like you say, be angry and have a fit and slam your things from one side to the other at the cash register, and not be with a plastic fake smile on her face. And then you say, "Hey, what happened? What's wrong?" And then she'll tell you, "My kid is teething and was screaming all night long, and I'm exhausted." And you can say, "Wow, I'm so sorry," and it'll pass.
Let me help you pack those groceries. Anyone's helping here.
Yeah. And it'll pass soon, and then she'll breathe and smile, and things will be okay. But it's just, everything is more real. Everything is close. Everything is alive more. And it's a different feeling. It's just a completely different feeling.
I think we'd be amiss not to discuss the Army for a little bit, because that's a big unifier. The fact that all our kids go through this system where the Army is, I don't want to say lurking, but it's looming, and it's a lifestyle here. My kids get up sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning to go on a nature hike with the kids in the neighborhood. Like, imagine that happening in New York or Florida. It doesn't. So, but they're kind of gearing up for this process where the young people in this country, they become mature young adults rather quickly when they're faced with this existential crisis, that if they don't defend Israel, the bad guys are coming for their little siblings. That is something that brings out the maturity in anyone. But the Army is, I think, the great unifier. Do you have a son in the Army now, from what I understand? You want to talk about that a little? What that means for you?
We have two sons that they're in reserve duty now. So they finished the Army and they're called up for reserve duty, and it's on and off depending on the Army's needs. They did very, very many days from the beginning of the war, both of them, depending, each one on their different jobs. It's important to say, I think, that the Army, for most Israelis, not all of them, it is like you said, it's like a unifying kind of sieve that you go through, and that gives you your stamp of, I gave to my country and I am part of this. And it is maybe the one time where Israelis submit to a system, and that's
greater than them.
Let themselves be bossed around by other people, because we're very highly independent people. And, from small kids in school, they don't listen to other people, which is part of why we can innovate and create new things, because we're not great at listening.
Everyone has a better idea on how we should do things. That's just the way we roll. Everyone has a better idea.
Absolutely, but that's a big, big difference. I had an African woman who came to Haifa in a special program with a foreign ministry who wanted to learn things so that she could go back to her community in Africa and benefit the people there. And she was so surprised at just the market that we have, the farmers market. She said, "Wow, everybody is selling something different in the shop." Because in Africa, everybody picks what they have in their garden. They walk to where the shop is. They sit down in the sun. They sell what they can, and then they go home. And they don't even think about, let's make a roof so that we don't have to sit in the sun. They don't think about where I can improve to make things better. It is what it is, and you deal with what it is.
It's small-mindedness.
I don't want to say small-mindedness, because it's like, that's a judgmental kind of statement, but it's just, this is the reality I was given, so I have to deal with my reality. The Israeli way of thinking about it is, okay, this is the reality now. How can I make it better? How can I do it better? How can I benefit other people? What collaboration can I make to do things differently? And that's very, very different than any other place. We take it for granted because that's just what one does. I mean, what, you would just accept reality as it is? No, you make it better for everybody.
So people often say, well, that's because Israelis need to survive, but Africans need to survive, and the Yemenites need to survive.
Everybody needs to survive.
But not everyone can make water out of air.
Exactly. So the Army is a place that you go to, and you put yourself aside for the greater good. You know that we is more important than me. and you try to be your best self in your position. And there are many, many kids that from 16, they start thinking about how to be in the army, and they go to exercise classes, and you see them running on the beach and carrying heavy things, and they run in the water when it's cold, and they roll in the sand to make it difficult for themselves, and they go in, they do more things just to make themselves mentally stronger and physically stronger so that they can do better when they come to the army. And that is not the kids that go there. It's not because their parents sent them there. It's because they chose to go there. And they don't have to go there. They don't have to volunteer for a higher elite volunteer unit in the army. They don't have to do these things. They choose to do these things because
self-motivated.
They want to give to their country. And they say, it's my turn now, and I want to do. And there you see the big difference between the soldiers that we have, regular soldiers, and the highest ranking officers in our military, where you see there now in this war, there's a divide. So you have the regular soldiers who know that they're defending their home, and there's the highest ranking officers that become like politicians, and they have other interests. And so I'm sure it's very confusing to people who are abroad. They're saying, what's going on with the army? They're fighting like hell, but then the politicians are saying one thing, and the army is saying something else, and they should quit. They should not quit, ceasefire or not. I'm sure it's very, very confusing, but there's a divide there between the political level and the people. And the people are all united in what they want and what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, thank you for your son's service, both of them, because I don't have a son in the army, and I do the best with what I have, my mouth and my connections, to try to help it with the Hasbara and all that stuff. But this is not theoretical. Our boys are bearing their friends, and they're still completely determined to win this, even more, if anything. I haven't seen anyone shirk their duties because it's just so overwhelming, and someone else has to pick up the slack. And I've said this so many times as well. We don't have the luxury of sending, not that any soldier in any country is not a person with a family and a life and people who love him, but we're sending our best and finest young men out there into the depths of hell, into a booby-trapped hellhole, and to risk their lives for what? We could talk about, for another whole podcast episode, but it's very visceral.
It's a different subject, but they go. It's not for sending them; they're going because they say it's my turn, and this is not acceptable. I am not going to allow invaders to come and attack my home, my family, abuse my sisters. And the most of the soldiers who went to Gaza, many of them, they saw what happened. They saw remnants of the massacres in the kibbutzim and in the Nova Party. And if they didn't see there, they saw videos. They know what happened, and they know what's at stake. And they're going and they couldn't bear to sit at home. You have people who are older, past army age, that are itching to go because I have to defend my family. It's a natural instinct.
They all say the same thing. Ein li eretz acheret. Ein li eretz acheret. And I think we feel that more than ever, especially when from the inside out, as Israelis watching the world turn on us, people that we thought were our allies, our friends, all the anti-Semites with their pitchforks. I think we know more now than ever where we're welcome, where we are not. It's not a luxury anymore to live here in Israel and to be surrounded by people we feel safe with, our family and friends, but a necessity. And I don't want to leave Israel. I don't want my kids to go to Chutz La'aretz. My daughter wanted to go to Italy for the summer. I'm like, I don't want her on the streets there wearing a Star of David or associating publicly with Jews. Who the heck knows anymore? Here, at least I know that my neighborhood's safe. We have Kitat Itkonenut, and our soldiers come home for Shabbat, and everybody's watching each other's backs, and we're all on the same page. And I go to army bases all the time, and I speak to the soldiers, and they're on the same page. There's no dissonance. It's so crystal clear that we're good fighting evil, that the fact that the world doesn't see it, the fact that America dropped the ball and let the Arab voice rise forth in their politics and destroy, a big part of our beautiful culture. But that doesn't change the Israelis' mentality. If anything, it's just strengthened it, and I'm prouder than ever to be an Israeli, even if my Hebrew is terrible. And my accent.
It doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter. It matters that really these ideas, and that goes back to the introduction that I wrote. The ideas that I was raised as an American, I didn't see them in practice in America. I see them in practice here. And the idea of content of character, judging somebody not by the color of their skin, not by their title, by their anything, but by their content of character, that's what matters here. The idea of all lives matter is a great slogan. But when you're saying it in a rally, when you're hating on some other group, you don't really mean that. When you're in Israel and you go and drop everything, you're religious people, and in a holiday, go and drop everything and drive to meet people that are not from their milieu, and they fight going house to house, overwhelmed, with under firepower and overwhelmed, outnumbered. And they do it anyway for people that they never saw before in their lives. That is your family. That is rescue. That is be all you can be.
That's all lives matter. That's diversity. That's the beauty of working. I see it everywhere here. I'm like, the world are such fools. We are literally proof that you can have diversity and you can have multiculturalism, and it can work if there's respect and love and connection. We have that connection. That's what we're talking about, this deep connection to the land and to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And to God and to the Torah, of course.
Yes.
When am I going to go to the lavender farm with you? When are we planning a trip? I'm serious. I've been thinking about it since I read it. Does it smell like lavender? I mean, it must be insane.
So it's really interesting because there's a lavender farm that's in the Golan, in a nice little community.
I'm going to put a link to your blog, by the way, in my show notes. So everyone go ahead and just bookmark Forrest's blog, because she writes so beautifully and she puts pictures, and it's just well worth your time. Even if you're not such a big reader and you're always TikToking, grow up and read something, So I'm going to put the link in the show notes. So go on. So it's in the Golan.
In the blog, you can look up just about any subject and you'll find something. And it's a very strange experience that I have sometimes, because I've been writing for many years, that I go back to something old and I say, wow, did I write that?
It's all good stuff.
And it's relevant.
All relevant. Yeah, I said it's evergreen.
The stories keep coming back. I very specifically I try not to write about the news, but about ideas and values and inspiring situations that anybody can connect to. Because the news cycle is a news cycle. That's just details of the day. But values and ideas, they stay forever. And lavender, the fresh smell of lavender. Relevant.
But lavender, you travel. I see that you go out and you experience the land. So tell me about this.
The lavender farm is a place where there's a farmer that what he does is grow lavender. And other farmers have all kinds of other crops, but they grow flowers and they do all kinds of things with their flowers. And it was an interesting experience because lavender is not a smell that I particularly like.
Me neither.
But when you smell it fresh from the flowers,
it's perfect, right?
It's something completely different.
Isn't that amazing? As soon as man touches something, they alter it in a way, like God's creation is in its purest form.
And I like purple, so it's really nice.
I'm looking here. By the way, it's called azizolavender.com. They have a ton of products. Their shop is so dreamy. I'm totally going here, by the way. I'm going here. They have lavender chocolate, lavender wine, lavender candles. I'm so excited. But this article is not about lavender. It's about the people behind it who, you write, saved Israel. What's the story there?
Well, they sell all kinds of things that are, cosmetic and like you said, chocolate and things that are fun stuff. First of all, they started off with, it was an innovative thing because Israelis used to use mothballs to protect their clothes. And mothballs work, but they smell horrible. And then they discovered that if you put lavender in a nice little sachet in your closet, it smells nice and it does the same job. So of course they had to innovate and make new products after that, because also the lavender lasts. He said there are a few people in their community that still have their lavender from 30 years ago. And he's like,
Wow.
go ahead, buy a new packet already. When they say, but it still
Splurge. Go
works.
ahead. We have unlimited lavender.
It still works. Why should I change it? It's still good. So they have this. So it's a nice little place, and the guy who runs it is very pleasant and willing to explain a little bit about the history. So it's a nice little experience. And then suddenly he started telling us about October 7th. So you never know what you're going to hear when you go to different places in Israel. People are surprising. Everybody has a different story, a different background. If you wait patiently or you ask enough questions, suddenly you're going to get something come out. So he tells us a story that on October 7th, a woman who's a customer of his called him crying on the phone. He just said, "You have to help me. You have to save us. You have to save us." And he's like, what do you want? I sell flowers. What do you mean I have to save you? What? And his farm is in the north. The invasion was in the south. Israel is a very, very tiny country, but it's not one next to each other. So the people in the north felt a little bit, disconnected, not something that was close by. It's like, I'm not close to you, and I sell flowers. What do you want? So she explained that her husband was working in the Shura camp, which is where they took bodies of people who were massacred for identification. And there were so many that within the one day, bodies were piled to the ceiling in the rooms and in the hallway. And the smell was so overwhelming that the people working there were becoming physically ill. So it's enough to be soul sick from seeing this really unbelievable horror that you can't imagine. It was a shock to everybody when it happened, and having to deal with the bodies that's the people who do the work feel that it's holy work. And so it helps them do it, but it's still physically very hard. Emotionally, it's very hard. It's just unspeakable. But the smell is sensory overload. It was just too much. So he made little packets of lavender and lavender oil that the people who were working there could put under their face mask and breathe lavender instead of breathing in the stench of death. And so it was already, he sent them the packages, and the next day it was there so they can continue their work. And this work was really very important because nobody knew what exactly happened. We didn't know how many people were slaughtered. We didn't know what was going on. There were very many families, including one of our friends, who were sick with worry, looking for their relatives, looking for their kids. They didn't know if they were dead or if they were a hostage, what happened to them. So doing this identification process as quickly as possible was really, really important for just the well-being of everybody. So it wasn't just the issue of giving proper treatment and burial to the people who were slaughtered, but it's just the mental well-being of the entire nation really dependent on getting answers, as many answers, and getting control of this terrible situation. So it was quite just a little story. It's just a little tiny story, something you would never expect to hear. Lavender saves the day. So they used technology to help with identification process. They used expertise of the people whose jobs it was. They used the determination of the people. But it took something from the land to complete the cycle and make it possible to deal with this horror.
Wow. Now I understand why you write that this is a love story, because that's really what it's all about. That's what motivates all of this incredible kindness. It's just love.
It's a love story between the people and the land, and between the land and the people. This land loves us back. There's a great poem I also wrote about it in the blog that said no other land would cling to a Jew. And this land gives us life. This land gave us our name, gave us our identity, gave us our cultural background, our language, everything. And that's why we're forever connected. You can be in a house anywhere in the world and you can have a great life. You can make a great living. You can do all kinds of things. But there's a big, big difference between a house and a home.
Forrest, you remind us of all the values that we cherish. And I appreciate you so much for being here and for sharing your blog with the world. And in this incredibly dark time, we have relied on each other for hope and for inspiration and for just a shoulder to cry on. And I've met such wonderful people. That's one of the silver linings from this all. So what can I say? Listen to Forrest, make Aliyah. I always say, do one thing today to get your Aliyah process in motion. And I will greet you in the airport with Nefesh B'Nefesh. And that's it. Just believe good does triumph. There's always hope. And when you're home, you're with people who love you. That's something that our enemies can never take away from us. I say they could do whatever they want to us physically, but they cannot take away our unity. They just can't. They'll never touch it.
You can't take away a family. Always remember, family can fight. Family can even be at places where you don't really like each other all that much, but you're still family and the love is there. And I want to say to people who maybe think Aliyah is very far from them or it's too difficult or what, do something to defend yourselves. Do something to protect your family. Do something to make sure that you are safe wherever you are in the world, because you have to know that no one is coming to help you. No one is coming to help you. Only you can help you. And you need to make sure that your children, that you know how to walk down the street and deal with an attack if it happens, that your home is safe, that you can address that. I would prefer if you came to Israel. Then somebody, even strangers, will come to your defense because Jews defend Jews, but nobody else will do it. So if you're not coming home, make sure to do whatever you can so that you can protect yourself, because that's what counts.
I concur. So there you have it, episode 205 of the Weekly Squeeze. If you want to help Israel, by all means, head over to my show note links. And there you'll find links to my WhatsApp chat, my Beautiful Land of Israel Instagram page, and my music on Spotify. If you love this podcast, share it with a friend, and I will see you, my little friend, next week.